You are listening to the Fit Figure Formula podcast. I help female perfectionists beat self-sabotage and lose the weight for good using the Fit Figure Formula coaching program. I'm your host, Stephanie Riles, registered dietitian, personal trainer, and mindset transformation coach. If you've been struggling with all or nothing thinking, negative self-talk, or self-sabotage, this is the podcast for you. Learn how to get consistent and become the best version of yourself from the inside out. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to the episode. Today I'm going to be sharing a training that I did inside of my Facebook group. So my Facebook group, I go live every single week in my Facebook group. And not only do they get these amazing trainings, but they also get to ask me questions and engage with me in real time. So I have a quick question for you. Are you already inside of my Facebook group? If not, you'll definitely want to check out the show notes and come on over. It's a free group where I teach you more about macros and mindset. So I want you to sit back, enjoy this episode, take some notes, and don't forget to come over to the Facebook group by clicking the link in the show notes. Hello, it's Coach Steph. I am back with another live and I have a special guest today, so I'm super excited. So if you're watching the replay, just type in hashtag replay in the comments and let me know that you're watching. If you have questions about PCOS, insulin resistance, or hormones, this is the live for you. I'm so excited that you're here. Make sure you drop your questions. So I got a lot of great questions that I'm going to go through. But if you happen to have any questions and you're watching the live or you're watching the replay, you can type those in. So I am just going to make sure that I'm set up. If you end up watching live, say hello to me so that I know that you're here. If you're new to me, I am Coach Steph, registered dietitian, personal trainer, and mindset transformation coach. I am the host of the Fit Figure Formula, which is my 16-week macros and mindset program. And I have an amazing guest today. I've been searching high and low for someone to interview regarding PCOS. And I was referred to Tianna. So I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us more about yourself, who you serve, and what you do.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Steph. So my name is Tianna. I am founder of Love Serve Form. I'm a master's prepared registered nurse and PCOS hormone coach. I help busy professional women with PCOS learn to lose weight, get pregnant, and navigate perimenopause naturally. And that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So I kind of want to start with you telling us, how do you work with clients and what does that look like? What can someone expect if they're having issues with PCOS hormones? What can they expect?
Yeah, so I have a customized approach. It's a 12-week program that's individualized to every client, right? Women with PCOS, there are usually about 5 hormonal imbalances that they commonly struggle with. However, the symptoms can look very different from woman to woman. So we have a framework that we go through with nutrition, mindset, understanding your cycle, and things of that sort. But the granular approach to PCOS looks differently for everyone. It's really a lifestyle change and helping them to support them in understanding how are the foods that they're eating, the things that they're doing in their personal life impacting their PCOS, and how can we create a lifestyle that you don't have to take a break from, doesn't require restrictions to get you back on track.
Great. That sounds so much like me. We're using a lot of the same language. I love it. So let's start with what is PCOS and how might you know that you have PCOS?
Yeah, that's a great question. So PCOS is a collection of hormonal imbalances. So most women can suffer from an hormonal imbalance without necessarily having PCOS. It becomes PCOS when there is a collection of these hormonal imbalances. So the hallmark symptom for PCOS is believed to be polycystic ovaries because it's in the name. But in actuality, the hallmark symptom of PCOS is insulin resistance and menstrual dysfunction, right? So how will a woman know that she has PCOS? A lot of times she won't, right? Because society is set up in a way that we are told that the symptoms that we suffer from to help us discover, kind of self-discover that we have PCOS are normal. despite, right? And despite how common they are, we know that they're not normal. So what does that look like? That looks like so many of my clients being put on birth control in their young adolescence because their menstrual cycle was irregular. That was the sign that they had PCOS. That was the sign that there was some hormonal imbalances that needed to be addressed. And unfortunately, for a lot of women, they are put on medication that kind of silences their symptoms. So they have no way of knowing that they have PCOS until it's time to conceive. Unfortunately, this is the space that most women find out that they have PCOS.
Okay. So, let me dive into one of the questions that I got. Someone was very serious. She posted like 12 questions, and I was like, yes, girl. And everyone said, yes, those are great questions. I did get a question. I get this question a lot too in coaching my ladies about belly fat and like, why is it so hard to get rid of? This person said, I can mess up 2 times and it's like I gain weight. I feel like PCOS is easy to gain weight, but hard to lose it. And then, I meant to ask you how to pronounce this word. So she said, how can I decrease HURITISM? I don't even know how to pronounce that.
Hirsutism? Hirsutism.
Yeah.
It's a condition where women grow facial hair in places that they
Oh, okay. I
necessarily
didn't know that that was okay.
to hormonal imbalances. And I think we all, this is what I'm talking about, Steph. You're like, I don't know. You've seen an auntie with face with a mustache and a
Yeah.
chin. We just thought it was natural growing up. We thought that it was okay. It was never okay. Women are never supposed to have these like male dominated hormones and characteristics and features. Right? But growing up, I feel like we shrugged it off so often that when we struggle with it in our everyday, we just think it's so common. Like, oh, it's just genetics. I just got a little peach patch, little curly, and it's so much deeper than that.
Yeah. So how do you manage belly fat and why does it seem like it's hard to lose fat in that area? That's a very common question.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, right? The best way that I could describe it is that you're not fighting the fat, right? So from that standpoint, there's no amount of macro, no exercising, nothing that is going to help you lose weight because the hormone responsible for fat loss is imbalanced, right? And this is insulin resistance, right? So I could best describe it as I live in South Florida, right? And my AC is like always down. It's like down to the ground. It's like 68, right? And if I was to walk into my house one day and my house, my AC was set at 68, but the house felt like a humid 80, I would be looking at the house sideways. I would be looking at that thermostat like there's no way, right? And in the same way, women with PCOS, their internal thermostat that's supposed to be regulating their weight based on the macros that you've set out for them or the exercises, it's not working, right? And this is because that hormone is imbalanced. Insulin literally has the fat cells in a headlock, right? And so, from this standpoint of hormonal imbalance, there is no amount of caloric restrictions, there's no amount of working out, there's nothing that is going to work until you get to the root of that hormonal imbalance, right? And why this hormonal imbalance specifically creates belly fat is because it is not your regular fat, right? It is not the regular weight that women often can lose much easier. This is a hormonal fat. And the thing about hormonal fat is that it functions as a whole organ, right? It produces excess estrogen, right? It doesn't distribute evenly the way regular fat does, right? This fat is specific. It's like in the back of your arms, in the back of your neck. It's right there on the belly, right? And it's very specific because it's coating all of your major organs. And that's why fat is different. You don't gain the fat everywhere. You gain it right around those vital organs. And it functions differently because this fat creates its own hormonal system. It starts to create more estrogen, which further creates more hormonal imbalance.
Yeah, well, that is really good to know. So well, actually, let me stick with this because I want to make sure I get all of her questions answered. Um, she says, why does it feel like weight loss is slower? So you kind of address that like it's a hormonal issue and you have to address that like the foundation first. She also asked, what can I do to manage stress levels that might affect weight loss progress?
It's a good question. I feel like so often women clump women with PCOS all together, and that's like saying like, what can Black women do to relieve stress? And it's like it doesn't, it's not all inclusive, right? It really has to be an individualized approach. How are you metabolizing stress in your life? What is the source of stress that you have in your life, right? It can look different for everyone. I'm a special needs mom, right? I got two on the spectrum and one in hospice, right? My oldest is on hospice. My life looks much differently, and the way I'm going to manage stress looks much differently from someone else, right? But that can be anything that brings you joy, right? Anything that is an intentional disconnect from the matrix, so to say, right? And that can look differently for everyone. But what we have to be most intentional about is the consistency that we do whatever it is that brings us joy, right? And that can look differently for everyone. For me, I enjoy a nice run in the morning. Like I feel good when I do that. It's more than the physical. I feel it in my, like, I feel good, right? For someone else, the girl's like, I'm not doing that anymore. I want to talk to my girlfriend in the bathtub with a cup of wine on the side, right? So that looks differently for everyone. And I never want to paint the picture of what that should look like for you, right? You should know because you get the feeling. It feels good to you. And then whatever feels good to you, just try to do that consistently.
And I feel like we have to recognize, it sounds like this person already recognized that they do have some stress. And we all have a little bit of stress, but like understanding when it's manageable, when you feel like it is unavoidable stress and how to manage it, but also how to like delete some stress out of your life and then find actual joy. So sometimes we think of it like self care or getting your nails done, but to me, that's not like fun. Like, I'm talking about fun. Like, make sure you're laughing, you're enjoying your loved ones, you're building relationships, you're utilizing your talents, gifts, and abilities in this world that make you feel useful and valuable, and like developing that relationship with yourself. I think that's all really important. And like you said, it is very individualized. Um, she also asked, is there an ideal weight loss pace for PCOS to avoid hormonal imbalances?
Yeah, I feel like this is, again, a lot of things with PCOS is individualized, right? I feel like a woman who weighs 350 pounds is going to lose weight differently than a woman who's 160 with like 10 pounds to lose, right? So we don't want to compare our goals or our desires to anyone else, right? But what I will say is that with women with PCOS, there can be this sort of weight plateau that can happen for maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks when trying to lose weight. So in an event like that, it can be natural for there to be an exorbitant amount of weight loss after a plateau, right? Like a poof, like a lose 9 pounds or something like that. But that kind of weight loss consistently is not healthy, right? We want to have like that 1 to 2 pounds a week of weight loss outside of those like major, like those major weight loss after a plateau. But normally we want to lose around 1 to 2 pounds because that's what's sustainable and that's what evidence shows that is best to keep off long term.
Yes, I agree with that. Next question would be, what markers are you supposed to be tracking in order to measure improvements in insulin resistance? Let's first talk about what is insulin resistance, and then you can say what markers you should be tracking.
So I describe insulin resistance best as like a toxic ex-boyfriend, right? And we've all had one before. And if someone says they don't, then like you're lying, girl, because we've all had them, okay? But it's like, you know, that guy, you liked him so much and he would call you and you just be like, you just be so open, right? In the beginning, you didn't know any better, right? And it's like this is technically what's happening in our diet with just capitalism and just like everything that we have set out. So we're eating what makes us feel good, right? We're eating foods that are usually highly processed, high in carbs, right? And so just like in a toxic relationship, in the beginning, you accept the breadcrumbs, right? You accept the calls at all times of the night and stuff. But then soon you're like, this is not really working out for me. And the guy starts calling and you're like, I'm not going to answer anymore. You kind of like played yourself, right? This is what's happening with insulin resistance. It's like insulin is a hormone that's responsible for allowing sugar to go from the bloodstream into the cells, right? So when we think about insulin, we have to understand that 50% of women with PCOS will develop diabetes by age 40, right? That is the statistic. So 1 out of every 2 women with PCOS will develop diabetes by age 40. PCOS is considered diabetes of the ovaries because of this, right? So when we talk about insulin and women are eating eating a diet that's moderate in processed carbs and um, refined sugars, what happens is that eventually the insulin hormone gets overwhelmed. It's like, this is a toxic relationship. Like, you keep calling me too often to transport the sugar from the blood into the cells because it can't do it on its own. And insulin's like, I'm not answering the call anymore. Not answering. Sorry, get someone else to do it. So then, meanwhile, you're like eating, right? You're like eating a meal, and you should feel energized at the end of that meal, right? But you don't. You've got the itis. You are like, I need a nap, right? And that's because the glucose that is located in the blood, it can't make its way into the cells, into your mitochondria to be used for energy. They're stuck just partying in the blood cells. And why in the blood? And why is this toxic? Because this is diabetes. This is why they cut off grandpa's foot, right? Because the sugar can't be in the blood. Sugar is venom in the blood. Sugar in the blood creates bacteria growth in the blood, right? So this is where the low-lying inflammation with PCOS comes from, the insulin resistance, right? And then can you remind me, Steph, on what was the question, the markers on insulin?
Yeah, how should you be tracking improvements in insulin resistance?
Great. So insulin resistance has a few, what's the word?
Like symptoms,
Uh,
telltale signs,
yes,
or
telltale signs. There you go. Thank you, Steph, for rescuing me. It has some telltale signs. One of them is the apron belly, right? It's not specifically like fat in the belly. It's like that belly kind of like flips over a little bit, causes the apron belly, right? That's one of them. The second one is that women will have discoloration in the back of their neck, right? There were some memes back in the day. Like, we've all known someone to have discoloration in the back of the neck. Not knowing that's a sign of insulin resistance. That means you're on your way to diabetes, right? Those hyperpigmentation on the back of the neck can sometimes make its way to the face, right? I've had clients with it on the cheeks. Sometimes it can be on the breast and the chest, right? It can be in between the thighs. It can have the hyperpigmentation right between the thighs. It's like blackness on both sides of the inner thighs, right? Insulin resistance can also increase facial hair growth because it causes a domino effect, right? So what we want to do is we want to be kind of systematizing our symptoms, right? So that we understand when things are getting better. And I always say it to my clients, like, what's not measured is not managed, right? So insulin resistance, although it has certain telltale signs, it will look differently from every woman. So I always recommend that you systematize your symptoms, and then so that you have a clear understanding of what you're doing, if it is working to alleviate your symptoms or to make them worse.
yeah. And I think too, and you can tell me if are y'all already like taking your blood sugars? Like, are you checking your blood sugars on a regular basis? Like, when you're going to doctor, are they checking your A1C? Is that something that they do with specifically with PCOS? Are they checking it every 3 to 6 months?
So
Your
it's a
A1C?
great question, and it's kind of like multifaceted. The first part of that is that I actually have my master's in medical health law with a concentration in legal regulatory compliance. I went to law school because I thought I was going to fight the healthcare system, right? I've got a sick child, and she needed some life-saving treatments that weren't approved by insurance. So I decided to go to law school because I thought I was going to
Girl.
take down the system. And what I figured out in law school was that the system was created just how it's supposed to be, right? So let's start there, okay? The next thing I'm going to say is that as someone who has like worked in insurance, is that our system is created to be reactive and not proactive. So to answer your question, no, absolutely not. Your blood sugars are not checked every 6 months. Your A1C is not checked every 6 months. And it will be a fight in hell to get a doctor to check your insulin resistance. Okay. It's just a war zone, right? Doctors have 15 minutes to address a hormonal condition that gets 0.1% of research funding, right? And there's no education. There's no, and I think that the system is created just how it's supposed to be, right? Because I've done podcasts with women from Australia, and I'm very vocal about I had a pregnancy loss at 6 months pregnant. And so she was just like, when I found out I was pregnant, my doctor immediately made me do a early glucose pregnancy test, this, that, and he threatened me with a pregnancy loss. And I was beaming, I was gleaming. I was like, I love this. This is the Australian medical system. And she was so distraught. And I was like, what would be our reality if doctors gave women this reality when they came into the doctor's office? You need to manage your blood sugars. You need to learn how to eat better. Instead, we're doing birth control, metformin. We're not answering any questions. We're telling them birth control can handle it all, right? Coach Steph, like in a dream world, your blood, your all of your hormones would be checked, right? Your blood sugars would be checked every 3 to 6 months. Metformin would be at the end of the totem pole because knowing that you're already in line for diabetes, nutritional education and management would be at the top of the totem pole. But it's not. And why isn't it? Because the healthcare system was created exactly how it was intended to be. Because because police officers are to black men what doctors are to black women, right? It's a system that was never created for us, right? So 9 out of 10 times when women come to me and they're like, all of my labs are normal. I'm like, yeah, because the healthcare system diversity was never at the forefront of healthcare, right? When they created the norms for lab values, including your blood sugars, those were never created with women of color in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Those were created off of the subsets of white middle-aged men, right? So it's like even with their best attempts, even when you find a doctor who will order the 9 out of 10 times they're coming back normal because the lab work that is approved to be prescribed for the healthcare system barely touches the surface and identifying the hormonal imbalances that women are truly experiencing.
Yeah, and it sounds like doctors are only either just prescribing a medication without even like checking things, or they might be checking certain labs, but only ones that insurance will cover. And it might not necessarily be all the ones that you actually need. It's just the ones that are reimbursable. So,
Absolutely. And in my program, I actually run Dutch hormone labs, which is a set of 26 hormones. And it will reveal so much about my clients, like from the moment they wake up, what their cortisol level is, in the afternoon, in the nighttime. And I can tell them about themselves. I'm like, I know what you're doing at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. Well, you're on TikTok scrolling. And they're like, how do you know that? I'm like, because your cortisol level is so high. And you know why sleep's happening. And those very same clients will take their test results with a badge of honor and badge into the doctor's office like, I know what's been wrong with me. And the doctor be like, I'm not looking at that. That's not recognized in the healthcare system because it's not covered by the healthcare system. And that is where the gap is, right? When we create a system for profit, it will run as it's according to do everything according to profit. And that means being reactive instead of being proactive. That means allowing you to be on metformin, increasing your dosage until you're diabetic, and then giving you insulin and questioning like, how did you get here? Well, what were you doing wrong?
yeah, I was on my page and I had just made like kind of a polarizing statement. Like, if your doctor is shaming you and he's not like referring you out to a dietitian, because we don't get a ton of referrals, but a lot of chronic like diseases, hello, we need to be managing our nutrition. And one of the physicians that follow my page was like, well, you know, he said something like, basically they're not going to do it, so no referral. And I'm like, so you're just deciding for the patient whether or not they are or not. And it was just really infuriating. Like, oh, okay, it's not going to hurt you to make a referral. If the client doesn't follow up, that's on the client, but like at least allow them the choice. Because some people don't even know that they can get help with their nutrition, because a doctor just telling you, you need to make lifestyle changes, you need to do this, and that, and then sending you on your way is not super helpful. Even when I worked clinical practice in an acute care hospital, I'm going in here with sick clients saying, hey, do this, do this, do this, do this. They need ongoing management, which is why like people like you, people like me are here to like walk you through the process. And that's just really important because lifestyle changes can be really hard to make. Um, yeah.
And just touching on that, like my oldest has a G-tube, okay? She's had oral aversion since the day that she was born, okay? No, not really. Let me rephrase that. It started about three when there's a suck swallow reflux, right? And when kids don't get to have a bottle in time and they lose that reflux, they can't learn it later on. It's like, how do I hold my breath, swallow the food? They end up with a G tube, right? We have never been given a dietitian. I don't know what a diet like. She's 16, right? We're in hospice. I mean, what better time than now? But it's just like it's to the point that it's like I've asked so many times. I've begged so many times. I'm like, there's got to be dietitians who specialize in G tube formulas because she eats nothing and it is like pulling teeth. And what I've discovered is a lot of times it's the doctors are in like their ego. They don't want to refer to anyone who could like compromise or like like because I'm just like I have trouble understanding. Like I see so many women struggle, not only PCOS, all of these comorbidities, right? And it's like dietitians are not broad, especially dietitians of color. I feel like you guys are invaluable, right? Because you guys have the cultural competence to understand how to genuinely affect women and their lifestyles. And you guys are so underutilized. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I know that in our profession, Black women are 2% of the profession, and I only recently on Facebook saw a
Mm-hmm.
Black male dietitian. I was like, I've never met one ever in life, and I was like, oh my God, I've never met a Black dietitian. Like, a Black male dietitian. I was like, let's follow each other because I have never met one.
No.
We're definitely a little unicorn. Every time I see a dietitian who is a Black woman or a Black man, I always like put the little unicorn sign and just say, hey, like, and we always connect and we start following each other because there's not many of us around. Um, Now, I want to make a little caveat. So, tell us a little bit about your story. Like, you became a registered nurse because of your family, correct? Tell us a little bit about that story because, like, yes, you have the medical background, but then, like, this is a personal fight for you.
It really is. It really is. And I think I don't share that enough. I don't talk about that enough. It is very personal for me. When I was just 18, my mom, she had PCOS and struggled her whole life to get pregnant. She only had one ovary, and she wound up pregnant on a vacation. And she came back and she was just like, Tiana, I can't do this. I'm a 36-year-old woman, like, and I was like, Mom, this is your dream. You better do it. And so, long story short, the pregnancy became very volatile very quickly. She hemorrhaged by 12 weeks. At 16 weeks, she had a cerclage. And by 22 weeks and like 6 days, 23 days, 23 weeks around there, she went into emergency labor. And I just remember them trying to convince her to abort the baby before she went into labor because there was just so many complications and it was just a risk to her life and the baby. But I remember this being her dream, and even knowing that she would be separated from me, her only child, she was willing to fight for that baby. And that's how I knew how deeply she needed that. And I wouldn't understand that feeling for a long time, right? But I went into surgery with her. I got the daddy band. I was a daddy. And this baby was born with 24-hour life expectancy, and she just kept living. And she kept defying all the odds. And she had her intestines taken out of her body, put into a bag so it can grow. She had the trach. We had the G tube. Oh my God, she just kept surviving surgery after surgery after surgery. And eventually came a time where they were considering bringing her home, and they said that she could never go to a home. She needed to go to a facility which would take care of her. And so, me being 18 and just being a hothead at that time, doing whatever for my mom, I was like, I'm going to go to nursing school. I'm going to bring this baby home. Like, I got this. And the hospital at first was a little apprehensive, but then I kept showing up and showing out. And long story short, I got a $40,000 scholarship to become a registered nurse. I went right into the NICU. I never really did anything else. NICU, labor, delivery, perinatal, ER. That's always been my thing for the last like 15, 16 years. Excuse me. And I was really a badass, Steph. I was like a badass, okay? I just felt like because of how I got into nursing, because of how I saved my sister, aka my first baby, like I just felt like you couldn't tell me nothing. There was nobody I couldn't save, helicopter, what you name, like what was I not doing?
Period.
And so when it was time for me to get pregnant, I was like, "Oh, this is a breeze. Oh, I got this." I knew what coworkers were going to deliver my babies. Oh, that's the doctor. I had everything planned out. And on Christmas, I kind of felt like these cramps, and I was like, "Oh, too much excitement from getting everything for my baby because I wanted nothing for me. Like this was a milestone. I got my associates, bachelor's, master's. I was married. I felt like I did the damn thing." On December 26th, I discovered that I lost my pregnancy. And because of the way that things are in Florida, I had to carry that with me. I had to carry him with me until December 31st, where I could, you know. And that situation destroyed me. It was multifaceted. It destroyed me because do you understand what it is to utilize your whole deductible on December 31st and have that thing roll over on January 1st? $20,000 in medical debt. I was so lost. I medical autopsies did it. Genetic testing did it. Spend thousands, like I must have spent the next like my whole life savings like on a quest to have answers, to understand, like thinking that answers would mend the broken pieces in my heart. And it
Mhm.
didn't. And then I remember just spiraling, right? Because I left with a 6 month pregnant belly and no baby. I had like all of this weight gain. And I just remember like spiraling, like with the weight gain, with the anxiety, with the depression, the symptoms were getting bad. And I just remember the doctors just being like, you just try again, like, wait 6 months, just so nonchalant. And I was really like, where do I go to pick back up the pieces? Like seriously, okay, game's over, laugh, like everybody go back to their space. Where do I go to pick up the pieces? Like who do I talk to? Like, men grieve differently from women. Women are very out and open. Men are very quiet and silent. I tell a lot of my clients when they lose babies, don't expect your husband to grieve the same way you grieve. Right? And for women who have never been through that, it was life shattering. And I just remember being in such a dark place and just praying like, God, if you would make me a mom. Because by this time I had given up my job. I was like, those women know I'm incompetent. They know I couldn't even carry my own pregnancy. How I'm going to deliver their baby high risk. And so I remember just being like in the middle of the darkness, like praying to God, like, God, if you would give me a chance to become a mom, if you let me become that Pinterest mom, like I will help so many women along the way. Like I will name my business Love Surf Warm and I will never take any of the credit. Like it will be like for you through you. Like, and that's why I named my business Love Serve One, because I wanted people to know like that love that's missing from healthcare. To like have that feeling of someone genuinely caring for them, because that's all I wanted in that time when I had that loss. I just wanted someone who knew what to do, who knew like how to help me put my life back together, who could just like just hold my hand, just guide me a little bit. And I felt like there was just so much coldness. I was like, all right, I'm gonna be the love. I'm gonna be the love, and I'm gonna serve it warm. We're gonna be love served warm, and that's really how I got here and why I'm so passionate about what I do, because it's like, Coach Steph, I should have never went through that. I work NICU. I work with all the IVF doctors, all the labor. How? And as I was suffering and going through like symptoms, they would tell me it's all in your head. You're a young girl. You never. And it was not in my head. And so I walk around with like this empathy for women that look like me. And I want so deeply for them to feel seen and heard in ways that they've never had before, because I know what it feels like to be shut out and to be disregarded and misunderstood.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Like when you first told me that, when we first talked about this interview, I was just like blown away. And the things that you've done, the sacrifices that you've made, the whole career that you've made from necessity, like from love. And I love it. So thank you for sharing that part. And if you are struggling with PCOS, like, do you not want somebody who's that passionate about your struggle and about walking with you and about doing this with you? Because in healthcare, it can't, like you said, the word cold, absolutely, it can be absolutely cold. And to have someone like you, I know your clients are really blessed to have you helping them. So thanks again for sharing that story. If you are watching and you know someone who might benefit from this conversation, go ahead and tag them in the comments. Nakosta, thanks for tagging Mary. I appreciate it. If you guys, again, have any questions about PCOS, insulin resistance, or just want to reach out to Tianna, you can put it in the comments. I'm going to be putting her Instagram. Is that the best place to reach you, is on Instagram? Yeah. So that you can get some support that you need. So I'm going to have a couple more questions because I thought this one was really good too. Are there natural supplements outside of berberine and inositol that might manage insulin resistance, which brands and dosage and amount? She wants to know all the things.
So when it comes to insulin resistance specifically, supplements that target, I think that you named the two biggest ones that target insulin resistance. There are some that indirectly target insulin resistance. We're talking like omega-3, we're talking like fish oil, we're talking like the magnesium, the zinc, right? All of these things indirectly support your insulin resistance levels, right? Now, when we go to like the dosing and the brands and stuff like that, I think that depends, right? Because there's different kinds of magnesium. There's magnesium glycinate, that's the one that I love. There's different times, there's different. So I will leave the brands and the dosage to your individual needs. However, I feel like a lot of times we can get caught up with the TikTok supplements, and I just feel like try to stick to the basics because your hormones work in harmony, right? So when we're talking about insulin resistance, you named the two main ones. Try to focus on supplements that support your overall healing and support your nutritional health. But I think that with the inositol and the berberine, you've basically identified the two biggest and main ones for insulin resistance.
Okay. So should someone consider medications like metformin to improve their insulin resistance?
Coach Steph, that's like a touchy question for me because my whole premise is to like break generational trauma and not be a victim to the healthcare system that was never created for us, right? So when someone comes to me and they're like, "Should I take metformin?" I'm like, "Have you had nutritional education and counseling? Did you see a dietitian? Have you tried to work with a PCOS coach? Have we tried to make changes outside of, right?" Because this is my thing. If you identify that you've got trouble with the way that you've eating, this is a habit that you have established in your body for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? Then a medication is not going to be the end be all end all solution, right? Because a medication cannot outwork a lifetime of habit that you've created. You need support in your lifestyle to understand. And my other issue with this is that from the moment that women are put on metformin, they just start getting their dose increased slowly but surely, right? And then you get your dose increase. What's the next step for women after metformin? It's to be on insulin. And with women with PCOS, having statistics of 50% of us will be diabetic type 2 by age 40, I don't want any of you guys on metformin, right? Because why are you on a diabetic drug way before you get diabetes? You are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. The minute the doctor says you need metformin, you need to be like, okay, hold on. I'm going to make a follow up in 6 months. And in those 6 months, tell me what I got to do to flip my life around. Try to do it on your own first before you become a victim to the system. Because once you become dependent on metformin, you're going to need B12 vitamins to take care of the metformin nutritional deficiencies that, like, you get what I'm saying? Like, these medications don't come without side effects, right? So if there is something there is something wrong with one of the integral habits that you are doing daily, my advice is always to do the mindset work, the lifestyle work that you have to achieve first before you allow for the medical healthcare system to become a crutch. That will be extremely hard to detox from once you rest in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is when you work with clients, because I got a couple of questions around like nutrition, like what kind of foods should you be eating? How important is protein? Like, do you work with clients in terms of like what to eat, meal planning and things like that?
Absolutely. So I do provide nutritional education and nutritional counseling to my clients. Um, but it's not from a place of like diet. And I feel like everyone's like, what's the best diet? What's the diet? And the reality
Hmm.
is that I don't want anyone on a diet. I don't want anyone doing anything that cannot be sustainable long term. So my focus is more like, how can we create a healthy lifestyle? Like, what does that look like? Something that you don't have to take breaks from, the 80-20. I like to say that a lot, right? So what that looks like is just prioritize. We need to prioritize protein, right? I like to give like these fun analogies, but like if you've ever been to a buffet, right? And this is like the worst analogy, but you've been to a buffet and you're so full to the rim, right? And they put a new piece of like butter steak on the grill, and then, oh my God, you gotta try this. You're like, I can't try that. I'm so full that my belly button will pop open, right? But then hubby comes around the corner, he's like, baby, you gotta try this cake. You got space for the cake. You didn't have no space for the steak, but you got space for the cake. That's because the hormones that respond to feeling of fullness can only respond to protein, and they don't respond to carbs. So this means that it is so easy to overeat on carbs. This means that we have to make protein the priority in every single meal, right? And we also have to create balance, right? So I do provide meal plans, but it just depends, right? I believe that it's like a spectrum, right? There's some women who benefit from meal plans. They're like, girl, lay it out for me. And then there are some women who are like creatures of habit. So like, give me a good 3, 4 recipes. I'm going to repeat them. Like, that's all I need. And then there are some women who are like, you know what? I like Uber Eats and I like DoorDash, and that's what I'm going to do. So help me make healthier changes within the lifestyle that I've already created. And I'm like, all right, girl, send me that Uber Eats menu. Let's see how we can add a little more veggies, or you know what I'm saying? So it really looks different for everyone. And I think that the power in personalized coaching is that you don't have to go buy a cookie cutter solution, right? We get to do what works best for you based on your unique lifestyle. And that might look like Uber Eats on a weekend, and that might look like meal prepping Monday to Thursday. It just depends on what your goals are. And how quickly do you want to achieve those in a realistic and sustainable way?
Yeah. So I do hear that question a lot, like, what's the best diet? And I always give that same answer too. There is no one best. Understanding your nutrition, understanding what works for you, and getting help is going to be the best way that you can actually customize something that you don't need a break from. Because if you are doing stuff, you're intermittent fasting, or you're ketoing, or you're low carbing, carnivore diet. Someone asked me about a carnivore diet the other day, about just eating meat. And I'm like, well, what do you do when you want to have cake? Or what do it's just like, how do you want to live your lifestyle? Start there. And then let's talk about like what that looks like. And Tianna can help you with that. So let the people know where they can find you to follow up for more questions or coaching, because you have one-on-one coaching available, correct?
Correct. So they can find me at lovesurfwarm.com or lovesurfwarm on all social media. It's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. And my one-to-one program is called the Healthy PCOS Protocol. It's a 12-week program for busy professional women to help them lose weight and get their energy back naturally. And you can connect with me on IG or at my website. Either way, I'm an open book.
Okay, cool. I'm going to drop the links, because you did drop a link for a free or a complimentary consultation for her one-on-one program. I'm going to drop the links to her IG as well in the comments. And then you guys can go ahead and follow and ask any questions that you want. And then tell them about your podcast too, because you have a podcast as well.
Yeah, so my podcast is called PCOS and Prosecco, and we basically like sit and talk about the topics that I feel like there's no space to talk about PCOS, right? The topics that really affect our community, and they affect our womanhood in ways that we don't always feel like so proud to talk about out loud. It's really that space where you can connect, have a glass of Prosecco, and talk about the issues most pertinent to our community.
I love that. I love that. All right, y'all. Thank you for watching. For those of you who watch the replay, first of all, thanks for watching the replay. I love that y'all, my audience does watch the replay. So don't be shy to put it in the comments if you have any questions. And thank you guys for watching. And Tianna, thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge with the people.
Thank you for having me, Steph. It's been an honor.
All right. Have a good one, y'all. See you later. Thanks for listening to the Fit Figure Formula podcast. If you're new here and you're struggling with your fitness journey, I invite you to take a super simple next step. Click the link in the show notes for a free training. If listening to this podcast has been helpful, imagine being inside the Formula Coaching Program. You can apply for coaching with the link in the show notes. I hope to see you inside.